Good morning, or good afternoon, or wherever you are. Just a reminder, words to live by. I think today is going to be pretty much the last time we visit these pots because they're done and some of them have already flown the coop and a couple more may fly the coop soon. But they're done and I wanted to use them to talk a little bit about the glazes and some of the variation you can get even within a single glaze. Often potters will use multiple glazes. They might do a pot half in this glaze and half in the other. They might layer. We often do one glaze over another because you can get all kinds of wonderful effects and different colors that way. Sometimes you glaze a pot and you wax part of it so that that part does not get glaze that adheres to it, so you can control even a design on a pot by using one glaze here, waxing it, and then overlaying another glaze that's of course not going to stick to the wax part. There are just thousands of possibilities. So what I wanted to do was sort of limit the possibilities for this family of pots, so I can show you how one glaze can, within its own, the range of one glaze and how varied it can be. So let's look at this pot, one of the family that I've done with this sort of identifying line here, and talk about how it worked. So one of the things about this pot, see if I can get the color to kind of come up well. There we go. The interior is a really, it's hard to photograph pots because they're so shiny. The interior is this sort of rich blue. And it's a rich blue because for the interior, I did a pretty straightforward glaze application, which is that I took, just a picture of the glaze. I poured it in, 1, 2, 3, and then I dumped it out. And when I dumped it out, there's also a spider there. Look at him. He likes this pot. Bye, fellow. There you go. Whoops. Okay, anyway, somebody likes this pot. So I dumped it out and then I just ran my finger quickly around the lips so that it wouldn't just sort of glop on the top. Because if you get a bunch of glaze that is just adhered and kind of gloppy on the top, when it's turned over and it's in the kiln, those all are going to become drips and might become, it might be beautiful. It also might be something you really weren't looking for. So for instance here, that's a little drip. It was a little thicker there. You can see the variation. It's huge. Just using this one glaze and a really straightforward glazing technique. But what I did here was I got a pretty solid interior, a little less on the inside because I'm running my finger around. That doesn't bother me, kind of like it. And then on the exterior, it does a couple things. You've got this cream color here, sort of a yellowish cream. Now this glaze on porcelain goes a really buttery, soft yellow because of the clay itself. This is, of course, our white stoneware. It goes a little more cream. I like that. It's a very gentle, sort of more earthy color. The cream color is transparent. So for instance, this is the track of a needle tool around there, or maybe a trimming tool. And I didn't sand it out because I didn't want that kind of uptight pot. So you can see some of the marks of the making of the pot that are retained and visible. And so they kind of swirl around this pot, give it a little motion and life. And you can see them because here it's transparent, but notice here, you couldn't possibly see through this more opaque blue because the glaze is thicker there and it's completely obliterated any chance of looking at those marks. So that's a very different approach. And here, which is key, this kind of recognizable striping that I integrated into this family. I haven't taken less glaze here or more glaze here. This was all glazed literally by dipping, hold, and out. And so the thickness of the glaze on the protruding parts and on the hollows was the same because the bisqued pot was porous. And so it sucked in that glaze at the same depth at the edges as well as in the hollow, identical. But what happens in the fire, and you get up to, in our parlance, cone 10, about 2100 degrees Fahrenheit in a gas kiln. And what that does is it melts the glaze. So what begins as a powdery thing you can scrape off or rub off or wash off melts like a volcano and it becomes glass, it vitrifies. And as it becomes glass, of course, it's fluid. And as it's fluid, it starts to fall away from the pot. So for a beginner using Blue Chun, it can be dangerous because it can fall away from the pot and all over the shelf and wreck the pot, wreck the shelf, be a big mess. But if you kind of know what you're doing, you can use that temperament within the glaze to good effect. And here I wanted to use it to accentuate, to really delineate this identifying marker on these pots. And so where the edge is sharp, the glaze is going to have melted off. And it's going to melt off and it's going to settle in the hollow between the ridges. And then it goes down, melts again, and settles in that hollow. And because of that, you get this really sharp stripe that is simply a matter of the glaze responding to the structure of the pot. But the other thing you see here that's very identifiable is this band of color here. And the reason you have a band of color there is because I intentionally overlapped the glaze by dipping it twice. So I dipped it once, and then I let that dry a bit, and then I put my hand in, and I dipped the pot again, and that created an overlap. And the overlap is just thicker glaze, and that's what gives us this deeper band of color. So I happen to love this color. It's one of my favorites. I just love this color. And I have a couple different Blue Chuns, and some of them go a deep purple, and some of them are much lighter. This is the same glaze on a porcelain pot. It goes a little lighter because the clay body is lighter. So you can get these very different colors even without changing your recipe. Anyway, I could show you a lot of pots. I'll restrain myself here, but let's stick with this pot. So anyway, here you get this deeper color band, and then above it a blush where it's kind of thicker but not drastic, and here it's super thin. So it's just transparent, it's translucent, and you just get a kind of enriched color of the clay itself. So anyway, these are the pots. I'm going to be raffling one of them off. If you care which one gets raffled off, let me know. That'll happen in the next, I guess, couple days. I have to figure out how many raffles, figure out how many tickets, put them in a hat and move them around. But last note here is that this is just a drip. So I really liked this drip when I finished this. So I didn't really intend it. You don't necessarily intend to drip something. But in this case, I thought it added a really nice quality to the pot. And so I softened it a bit by rubbing my finger on it, rubbing a rib around it. But I decided to leave it. Here I didn't like it as much, and so I rubbed it off a bit more. But I thought that gave this pot sort of a really nice little character. So those are the pots. I'm going to do a final very brief video talking, well, I think I'll do, well, no, I won't do it now. I'll do one super quick video at the end to show you the clay that I haven't used. This is my job for the afternoon. Pots that I did not like, which are in the clay stage. You just break them up, chuck them in there. Here's one that I had a couple feet on that I was playing around with, didn't like it, chuck it. And also all the clay that you trim off the sides, it all gets reused. So especially with porcelain, which is pretty expensive, you want to reuse it. Anyway, I'll have like a super quick video on that later. Meanwhile, notice what lights you up. Look for the results of the raffle. I can't wait to get that in the mail. And I gotta go to the post office today because I got pots going to California and North Carolina. Yay. Happy hot chocolate season. Thanks for joining me. Bye.